On the top left, recording. All right. All right. So tonight I have a very special guest. I have my sister. It is Tammy Dingman. She's a multi-time beauty pageant winner, a wife, mother, sister, Christian, and in no particular order. So thank you, Tammy, for coming on the show. I appreciate the opportunity to interview you. It should be fun.
Oh, no, thanks, Trav. I appreciate that. I like what you're doing. I like that you're interviewing the average Joes and Josephines. So
yeah,
I love it.
I try.
Awesome.
Everyone has a voice, right?
Yeah.
So I have kind of a hard icebreaker for you, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I just figure it's difficult, but it should kind of come to you quickly. So the icebreaker question is, what is something memorable or something that someone has done for you that has made an impact in your life? So it can be a one-time thing or a person that's made an impact on you. What's just one thing that kind of comes to mind that you can recall that was kind of a valuable thing that happened to you?
God. All right. I got to go to Jesus. Can I go to Jesus? Right off the bat? I'm like, can I go to Jesus?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like I said, I'm not going to pay. You can do
honestly, for me, that's the most impactful thing that ever happened to me in my life. So when I was 15, I did a lot of studying religions. I mean, I had like a whole bunch. I'm not going to name any of them, but I had people come in my house. I studied with people in my house. I had people show up on a sidewalk. I studied with people on a sidewalk. I got, a copy of the Quran. I did it. And for me, that was when I made a decision that I wanted to follow the Bible and like go that direction, not necessarily follow people, but follow the Bible and what it says. And for me, that was the start of my relationship with God. And that's kind of where my life changed. Like I was going one direction and I went a completely different direction. So that was my big impact, most impact. Jesus had to go there first.
Well, that's a big one. Going back to, I mean, you kind of talked about obviously the impact that had on you in your early teen years. What was a big thing that happened to you? We grew up on 26 acres of land. We were on a farm. What are things, because like I said, we grew up in the same house, but like I said, we turned out very differently. We have very kind of, not in a bad way, but very contrasting lifestyles, I would say. So what, I guess, did you really enjoy or something that really stood out to you when you were a child growing up on 26 acres of land? Like what did it teach you about life or what, good positive memories do you have about that?
Sure. So growing up on a little hobby farm, for me, I thought it was great. I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed having all the animals. I enjoyed, mom staying home, like getting off the bus and like there was cookies and like I enjoyed all that. I enjoyed having my parents around a lot. I think probably the thing that it taught me the most was that family is super important. And you mentioned that we grew up in the same house, but are very different people, but that's how we were raised. Like we were raised to be individuals. We were raised very independent. Fiercely independent, very responsible. Like that was just the example that was set before us, but it was very much like, do what you got to do, don't do what I do. Like, this is what I can offer you. This is the best I can give you. This is my hard work. This is my, my sacrifices our parents, did for us. But then it was, what are you going to do? What talents do you have? Like, what can you grow up and do? And I feel like our parents, although neither one of them ever went to college, I feel like they were very supportive and very much like, try it. You want to do it? Try it. You want to do travel softball? Try it. You want to do beauty pageants? Try it. Like, you want to go, like, I think, mom took you down to do travel basketball tryouts. Like
Siena College.
Like, I mean, it was just like, just try it. Just try it. If you want to do it, try it. Work hard and try it. And so I think that was probably the most impactful thing in our childhood, just being raised fiercely independent. So that's why we are who we are.
Well, yeah, it's funny that you raised that point because I feel that way about dad and mom too. They were very kind of contrasting people, not in a negative way, but like I said, mom was very, like religious, very active in, the church community, bus routes, Sunday school teaching, that whole background. And obviously kind of like, always praying, before dinner, things like that. Very kind of, can't think of the word, but very, like I said, that way. Whereas dad was more kind of, in my opinion, very like progressive. Very not kind of like, I'm not going to go to church, but this is why. Like he had his stances, but it was very like like I said, it wasn't like conflicting to mom. It was just more like, this is why I don't do those things. And it's just my stance on it. This is how I think. This is why I do it. And mom was kind of the opposite. So it's interesting that they functioned so well for 25 years. Meanwhile, they're kind of different ends of the spectrum in a lot of avenues. But like I said, it was interesting to see dad be, like I said, kind of more progressive, kind of more open-minded about certain things. And he was also very, he's very much older. So that was kind of interesting because, usually as you get older, you get more conservative, you get more like kind of like that mindset.
For
So
me,
that
that
was
part was awesome. Like I know we lost them at a younger age. I mean, I was in my 20s, you were early 20s, I think.
yeah,
So that part was hard, but like growing up with like the dad that was also a grandpa and like had already, gone out every Friday night, had already done his drinking deal, had already, all that stuff, and just said, to hell with that, I'm gonna do the family thing.
right.
For me, that was awesome. Like I had a dad, I had a grandpa, I had, a confidant,
Yeah.
and I think, like you said, him and mom were very different, very different, but they complemented each other really well. And I think that's important in marriage. Like on the good days, you can appreciate those differences. My husband and I joke around all the time, like on the good days, I love that, you're so methodical and that you do things this way. And I love all this. And on the bad days where we're not appreciating those differences, it's like, get away from me. I can't stand you for 5 more minutes, and that's very much, that was mom and dad, but they,
well, what made them special too is, to toot their horn is, they also worked together. So they had that 24-hour interaction. It wasn't like there was time away. It wasn't like there was 8 hours separate at their different career paths. They were very much like together all the time, trying to build a business, trying to build a family. They were doing it all, together all the time. So I really find the value in that, though. Like I said, they work together operationally every day. They also work together as a family function. So like I said, I think that was like a huge value that they had and a lot of respect for each other, trying to figure it out. And also, they moved away from all the support systems they had, right? They moved from Clifton Park up to Fort Plain, and, they were, dad tried to do his own business there. And it was just kind of interesting to see them, kind of take away all the support that they had as well. And then just try to function and figure it out in a whole different demographic and a whole different environment, a lot slower, more farm town, like that type of feel. Whereas they kind of came from the city of, Clifton Park back then. It was kind of blowing up. So it was just interesting to see. Yeah. But I also wanted to bring this up. Speaking of your youth, you're a beauty pageant winner. Multiple times you won beauty pageants. What did I have here? You had Montgomery Fulton County, Miss Fonda Fair, Little Miss Half Moon. I don't remember what age you were, but I think you were 16 when you finished in a top 10 in a pageant that was an 18 plus pageant, and you were 16 and you got just over top 10. And it was because of an age discrepancy because you were the youngest.
I was
essentially 13. That's what it was. And it was 16.
That was actually New York State.
Yeah, that's what it was. So I want to bring that up, because you were obviously competing at a young age, and doing a lot of, in front of crowds early on. You had to do speeches, you had to present yourself well. How did that really kind of critique like who you were as a person? Like I said, I think you started at 5, maybe I'm wrong, 5 or 4 from Little Miss Half Moon, and then you went all the way up to, I think 13 was the last time you did it, or was it 14? I can't remember.
That was well, yeah, no. I think I did Miss New York State. I did Miss Montgomery Fulton County, and then that led to the Miss New York State pageant, and then after that was Junior Miss Fonda Fair. That one was just fun. That was just a lot of fun. So I was 14 for that one. Yep.
14, right.
Yeah.
So you had multiple wins. Yeah. And like I said, you kind of dominated the area we were in as well. Like I said, and obviously going from Miss New York State, like I said, is very highly competitive. And you did all those things at a very, very young age. What is your key takeaways from that? Or like I said, how did you, what was your mindset like, I guess, when you're going through that kind of competition and like that kind of high demand of who you were, like I said, at such a young age?
It's interesting that you bring that up because I think that has a lot to do with dad. I mean, our dad used to announce my arrival down the stairs. So, I mean, that can kind of give a kid a little bit of a complex. You get a little stuck on yourself. So it was good for me to enter some of those pageants and lose too.
Yeah, definitely.
Honestly, for him, I think I was the only daughter, so I mean, at 4 years old, I can't imagine a child showing interest in beauty pageants, or anything like that. So it was kind of, we had a local pageant, it was Little Miss Half Moon. And they took me to enter, and I don't even know how many there were. There were several, contestants, and I think I was the only one that talked. So that's probably why I won.
Right.
And I could sing the words, what I thought were the words to an Alabama song, and life was good.
Yeah. Right.
So it just kind of, went up the road from there, and we just found different pageants that were local in Miss Montgomery Fulton County when we moved out, to this area in New York State. And then that led to the Miss New York State pageant. And then there was a local one, the Miss Fonda Fair pageant, which had 4 different age groups. And I was actually Junior Miss Fonda Fair because of my age.
Right.
Those were just fun experiences for me. I mean, and that's what Dad always really stressed. He said, you're pretty. It's not about you being pretty. I want you to go have fun, get out in front of people, kind of promote you. And so for me, that was, I was doing it because my dad was interested in it, my mom would drag me around all these things and buy me these pretty little dresses and get my hair done and all that stuff. And it was fun. Probably the most fun I had was Junior Miss Fonda Fair, because we got to ride in the pace car, at the races.
At the track.
They did a Joey Chitwood auto show, which I thought, this is going to be awesome. We're just going to ride around the track and give a little wave to everybody. And then we started taking off down the backstretch. And all of a sudden we go off this jump and we're on 2 wheels and my crown bashes off the window and bends backwards. And I lose diamonds out of my crown, like that stuff was fun. It was just a blast, and getting to know people. And during that Miss Fonda Fair pageant time, you're usually like a fair queen for like a year. So during that year, there was tornadoes, I think it was, in Mechanicville, New York.
Yeah, I remember
we
that.
Actually had family that lived down in that area. And so I got to go and help out with like food drives and different things like that. And that to me was fun, like just getting to be around the people and, interact and make friends and, lifetime memories, basically. Yeah. And I stopped with that last one, the Junior Miss Fonda Fair, because after that, I thought about doing the Miss New York State again. And I remembered the Miss New York State pageant was not fun. that was 50 girls. It was cutthroat. I mean, there was people stealing people's makeup. There's people stealing people's birth control. I was 13. I didn't know what birth control was. I was like, this is not fun. So my dad asked me, do you want to keep going? And I said, I really had it. Like, I feel like I had a good run, but I wanted to play sports. And I felt those were kind of conflicting things, because you can't really go to a beauty pageant with, a raspberry on your, from, sliding into second place. So, it was my decision. And he always said, when it stops being fun, just stop doing it.
Just get out. Yeah.
So, but it was a great experience being able to meet people.
Right. Well, and it teaches you a lot about, like I said, you're in front of an audience, they're gauging you based on everything you do, whether it's walking the line and then public speaking, how you present yourself, how you look, all those things. So it's very judgmental. And it takes, like I said, a lot of confidence to be able to do those things. So do you think that really helped with like your public speaking and like professionally how you carry yourself now?
Oh, for sure. It helps you, I think, learn how to approach other people too, because you kind of get to know the judges a little bit. So you try to feel like, all right, what are they looking for here? And sometimes it's kind of funny there. I did the Junior Miss Fonda Fair pageant. I did it twice, 2 years in a row. I did the first year and I won. The second year I got up there and I was like, okay, now I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm like overthinking it. And I got up on the stage. I was so nervous. I blacked out. I started talking about having shoulder surgery.
Kind of went off.
I was off in left field, and it was like, okay, I think this is time to be done, because I'm starting to get into this here. Like when it was just fun and it was no big deal and there was no stress, no pressure. I was great.
Right.
But being able to talk in front of people is it's a good skill to have. I mean, you don't want to go to even a party and hide in the corner, or go to church and not say hello to anybody, just sit in your little corner. So, I mean, there's parts of me that I like to be that recluse. I like to be by myself and grab a good book and go sit outside. And if anybody pulls my driveway, I'm going to be pissed, but, it's definitely a skill to be able to talk to people and carry on a conversation. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that brings us into your high school, I guess, ventures at this time, since you brought up that brought you into your teen years. So high school sports, you were really a phenomenal softball catcher. You also played goalie, soccer, and basketball. You more or less did just to kind of keep in shape for the other two that you really enjoyed.
I always say I played basketball so I wouldn't get fat in the winter. Yes.
Right. So what was that like for you? I mean, like I said, you were pretty dominant in softball, especially right up to you had rotator cuff surgery, which we'll address later. I have that noted. But what was that like being like a pretty dominant catcher and, also doing summer ball and then obviously, like I said, playing soccer pretty competitively?
Well, softball was my favorite. We went to a small public school where it was kind of you're not a big fish in a little pond, but I mean, really kind of, if you had any kind of skill at all, you really stood out, So my mom actually set me up with some tryouts for a travel softball team. And back in the day, it used to be you had to try out, have skill, and make a team. Now it's you pay, you play. I mean, I know.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's a whole different environment now.
I mean, we could play on whatever team we want to pay on as long as we're, willing to pay. So back then you had to try out. So I tried out and I made a team of, I think it was a 15 or 16U team at the time. I was 14 and I played, I think, 3 years total. So that would have, then I would have been on the 16U team. So I was on 15U and then I went to 16U. as a 14, 15, and 16-year-old as a catcher, and just really enjoyed that too. I mean, getting to travel all over the place. It was tournaments every weekend. I mean, we did camping sometimes. We stayed in hotels, and I think we have lots of pictures with you with a lot of older teenage girls. So I'm sure you have.
I was very lucky at that age, because I was like 13. And I also want to say, thank you also to you, because it's weird that like I didn't think about it at the time, but like without you doing all the sports you did, like basically I developed my whole personality around basketball, and I only used to play a lot when we were at your games, because I'd bring a ball, I'd try to find the local courts, and I was always playing with like 18-year-old kids and just trying to prove that I was good. And luckily enough, I could hang with some of them, which was nice. But that was a huge part of my life too. Like I said, like wherever you were going, I had to go, because you're my sister. I can't be left alone in the house, whatever. So I would always bring a ball, and I would always just hoop while you were playing. Obviously I'd watch it too sometimes, but it was just interesting that like a lot of my life became because of your time playing, because I had 2 hours or 2.5 hours at the courts while you were playing your sport. I was playing mine and critiquing my skills. So it was very interesting. But also, like I said, to bring up the summer softball team, like I said, I was like a super lucky kid, because I'd watch, you girls play when you were all 16. And, I still remember like the swim party at the end of the year. And like I was all hanging out with these girls' bikinis, like in the pool. And I was like the only dude there. And I was like 13. I was like, this is living. Like, just make this last forever. Yeah, but that was, it was great to watch you though, like I said, especially during that summer league. Like I said, you were, and I think it honed in your skills too, because I remember you were like really gunning girls down too as a catcher. Like anyone that tried to steal, you could pick them off relatively well. So I just think like that summer league really kind of critiqued you and built your skills too in a lot of ways.
It did. I mean, and it taught me to just, like the beauty pageants, of how to get along with other people. It's when you grow up in a kind of smaller town. I mean, we grew up in Clifton Park. We moved out here when I was 6, to the Fort Plain area. It was a small town. I mean, my graduating class in Shen would have been 960. My graduating class out here was like 60. And then as it was, I transferred to a Christian school. My graduating class was 8. So being in that small town, that small neighborhood, I think Mom and Dad were kind of always looking for that avenue to see the world is bigger. Go see the world is bigger. And, for me, that was softball. I mean, we traveled to Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire. I don't think we went as far as Maine. I don't remember going to Maine. Pennsylvania. I mean, we traveled all over the place. Every weekend was a different tournament, and getting to meet girls from all over the place too that were there for the same reasons and love softball. And we all had that in common, and it was a good growth experience. So and I still have some lifelong friends, from that particular time. So it was a great experience.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to bring up such as this is something that was kind of specific to us. And you can go, like I said, in as much detail as you want. But is there any childhood memories or interactions that we had as brother-sister that stands out to you? Like I said, I brought up mine, which was the travel softball, because like I said, that was like a lot of our experiences together was like you playing sports, and then I'd be there, and then we would hang out. I'd watch you play, or I'd go play basketball. So that was, like I said, a big influence on like most of my summers, was just being able to be a part of that. But is there anything that stands out to you as far as like one of our interactions or something that you remember specifically?
Oh man, oh gosh. And a lot of them revolve around sports. I mean, we did a lot with sports when we weren't playing in the backyard on, Mother's Day softball tournaments with all the aunts and uncles. And I mean, that was some serious competition.
It used to be pretty lively.
That was wild. Those family games too. I mean, just working together as a family. But really a lot of it did revolve around sports. I mean, we went, we got to watch you play basketball, and Mom, we were joking about this the other day. Mom with her like 80-pound VHS recorder with a little microphone, hauling around to games, and we'd have footage of you and your friends just being amazing, and that was a lot of fun. Just I think it taught us to support each other. No matter what we did. Your sport's basketball. I can't stand basketball. I suck at basketball. I was a 5'6", 130-pound center, because all I could do was box out, and I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. So I mean, just being able to watch you be good at something that I wasn't good at was amazing. And being able to watch you and your friends and develop relationships and hone your skills. And so definitely the sports, I think, is my positive memories.
Well, I have another one too that I wrote down because I knew I was going to forget stuff. But also one of the things that you actually sprouted me into also was being a water boy. I remember I was water boy for you girls first. I think it was 7th or 8th grade.
Yep.
And I was water boy for modified. So I was water boy for the girls team, and I'd practice with you guys too sometimes. And I remember doing sprints up and down, and like it was kind of like a challenge. Like you had to beat me and coach, I think, and then if you didn't, we'd have to run again and do sprints.
Yep.
But then that also kind of catapulted me into the varsity boys. Like I was JV, and then I got to varsity, and I was able to be a water boy for them, which, at the time, like I said, it's small town stuff, but it was a big deal. Like I was a part of and that team was really good too. That was, a team that went all the way to states. So like I said, it was a tremendous experience just to even be the water boy. And like I said, you're around these like talented guys all the time and like influence, growing up, especially because I was only like 13 or 12 at the time. So like I said, but that was a lot. I started with you guys as the girls, and like I said, developed relationships with all your friends and stuff. And it was a great experience. So like I said, just those things that, like I said, you really had a huge influence on my life, looking back in a lot of ways, like I said, just through sports and just what I could attribute to the girls team and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important to note too, because again, small town and small town politics, we weren't related to anybody out here.
Right.
So we kind of really had to work for everything that we got. I had this conversation with a coworker the other day. They said, how does your son like travel ball? I said, well, my son's not a coach's kid, so he's got to kind of work for everything that he gets, and not that coaches' kids don't work hard, but it's typical, for a coach's kid to be really good, be really talented. That's why the parents coach, right? Like I wouldn't put my kid sucked, So
exactly.
but, you have to work a little bit extra hard. So moving out here, us not knowing anybody, not being related to anybody, and for you, to be able to find yourself in those positions where you worked hard, you proved yourself, and they were like, hey, how about that Travis Bennett, and to be able to get positions like that's pretty cool. It says something about your character,
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about the rotator cuff scenario only because it was such kind of it was a difficult time for you, really, because because you were playing basketball, which was like your off-season game. It wasn't anything you really cared about. And it happened during basketball season in a practice, and you tore your rotator cuff, and then it kind of limited what you could do on the softball field the next season because you were a catcher, you had to throw. And it was just something that was kind of like limiting. So kind of, if you would express like, what was that experience like, especially knowing that, it wasn't even your favorite sport and it kind of took you down a road that like you didn't expect to go down at that time.
Yep. That's 100% true. I mean, I did play basketball so I wouldn't get fat in the winter. As I talked about, I was a 5'6" center because I could barely see the hoop 3 feet from it. And it was just during practice. I went up for a jump ball against another center that should have been a center. And I mean, she drove my arm down through my rear end, for lack of a better phrase, and dislocated my shoulder, tore my rotator cuff. It actually shredded my capsule. So I had I had 3 different surgeries, and my shoulder was never the same. And like you said, that was during my, sport that I could give a crap less about, like, why am I even here? It's just winter. I'm looking for something to do, and then softball season came, and that softball season I sat the bench and I did a lot of running because I couldn't throw. And then that was varsity of my junior year. So I would have been 16 turning 17. So I was going back to play travel softball that summer, because backtracking, the summer before that, I had gone to a few different camps. And one of the camps that I went to, they were scouts there from Marist College, and they were looking at, a bunch of us and
potential.
Right. So they had my name, and we had some communication back and forth, and I was coming into my junior year. And so that was the winter, my junior year, that I messed up my shoulder really bad. So that kind of put the kibosh on, geez, am I going to get a scholarship? You're hoping, because your name's on the list. They know who you are, you know who they are, you're kind of like, I'm going to Marist College. But around that same time, I also was doing all that studying and kind of met Jesus. So it was kind of like for me, I was leaving a part of my life that I thought was going to be it. Like, I thought I was going to Marist College. I was going to do something along the lines of pre-med best I could, maybe physical therapy, and maybe I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I don't know, like, this is my life was charted. And then all of a sudden, now I can't throw a softball anymore. So I did go out that summer. I did go out for travel softball, and I think I made it because I was on the team before, type of thing. And that was the summer that I was in center field. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in center field, and a girl was stealing from third, and I launched it, and I threw the ball over the backstop from center field. And I was like, we need to be done. Like, this is not
just the control is gone.
There's nothing left in this shoulder. So honestly, my shoulder was never the same. I did a lot of hitting, did a lot of running. I got to be part of some really good teams just as a pinch runner or, something like that. But that was it. My shoulder was done. So I kind of had to totally regroup 180. Like, I wound up going to a different college out of state, and I wound up not playing any sports in college. Right. Like, I wound up, hitchhiking and doing other things, but whatever. So, it was a life-changing event. And I think for me, anyway, everything happens for a reason. So like, I trust that was supposed to happen. As much as I didn't like it, I did grow from it. And, my life took a different course than I thought it was going to, but It's all good. As we say in school, it's okay.
Well, that brings me to your next point, because like I said, this is kind of later on in your teen years. You met your husband very young. You guys have been together ever since. Like I said, you have a family together, things like that. Kind of express, I guess, what that was like, meeting your husband that young, and how it's, obviously traversed up to this point. I mean, what does that mean to you? And, knowing, like I said, that you kind of, like I said, settled down rather early, and like I said, you still have a very strong relationship. So what's that like, or any lessons or anything you can maybe share?
Oh my gosh, we're going to be here a while. Buckle up. Need a water? Take a water. So no, I did meet my husband actually during that time. I was 16. I had met him when I was in 10th grade. He was not in 10th grade.
Right.
He was 21 at the time, actually, and my mother was not impressed
Right.
with that relationship. I can, fondly say that now she loves him more than she loves me, and that's
Right.
okay. But she was not very impressed with that at that point.
Right.
So, I mean, we kind of just hung out a little bit. Weren't like super duper serious because I was still in school and he wasn't.
Right.
And that was all during that time, 10th grade, finding Jesus, losing my shoulder, like everything was coming together.
A lot of transitional periods, right?
Yeah, at that same time. So we did stay together. We went to the same college for one semester. And then he kind of was like, this is not for me. I got to go to a different college, which was cool. And then we did stay together through that. And then when I was 21, we got married, and then we finished college. Both of us finished college after we got married. So that was kind of like, whoa.
Right.
So that was, something to support each other through. Excuse me. So we were able to, kind of support each other through college. And then, so after we got married, 21, moved to college, did a year. He finished at Cortland, and then I did a whole bunch of stuff after that. But so we've supported each other through college. We've supported each other through job up and downs. We've lived in an apartment, started off an apartment, which if I can encourage any married person, when you get married, and you mentioned this when talking about our parents, they moved away.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the best thing for their marriage that ever happened. So we were married for 6 months, and there was a really big event that happened in our life that kind of like flipped us inside out. And for the love and comfort of peace of everyone involved, I won't mention what that was, but there was a big event that impacted us significantly, and made us rethink, reshape. And that's when we decided, let's go back, let's finish college, let's do some things. We were kind of shortcutting. We were like, in a hurry, let's just get married, let's have a family, and so that big event kind of catapulted us into that next chain of events, which was good. But moving through that, and then moving through college, and then moving through jobs, what we're going to do, where we're going to be. I really always just wanted to be a mom. Like that was, I just saw that in my mom, and like how much she loved being home and like enjoying her life. And she didn't go to school or to work, I think, part-time until you were like in 3rd grade. I mean, she was just home. She loved it. Yeah. I mean, she was working with dad, and helping out there, driving a heavy equipment. So I guess she was working.
Driving excavators on big job sites.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like she had to be somewhere everywhere. It's 9 to 5, every day. But so I kind of just wanted to be a mom, but it really took us. So we were married for 9 years. And, trying all those 9 years to have a child, and it wasn't happening. So I kind of came to that realization of, what, I think I'm just going to give up. Like, we'll do foster care or something like that. Like we'll help somebody that has, a need. And we started going through these classes for foster care. And then lo and behold, we got pregnant after 9 years of trying and quitting trying. So just giving up all hope almost, and we have one child, and he's kind of like having an army. So we're good with that one moments, right? Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely not been all wine and roses. Like, yes, we've been together for a long time. I mean, my husband and I have been together for 25 years. We've been married for July will be 21 years. So I'm like, math is not my thing. But we have not had it easy by any means. There's been a lot of, like I said, that huge event that really turned us inside out. And then, kind of weathering that together, and then having some events that happened between us that was not recommended. It wasn't easy. I don't think that it wasn't easy. We really had to like grab a hold and and work through that. So I always tell him, like, if he wasn't so good looking, we wouldn't have made it this far. which I'm sure he appreciates. But honestly, if I didn't say vows, like if I didn't stand there before God and make a promise, I'd be like, peace out, bro. I'm good. So, but and that it is really the vows that keep us moving, and just that, and like I mentioned a little bit before, we can appreciate our difference. We are totally different people. I mean, you've been best friends with my husband for longer than we've been together. You're why we're together, actually. So let's tell that story, shall we?
Yeah, you can tell it about.
We definitely tell
I started
that story.
it, so.
But we definitely need to appreciate those differences as much as possible. And on the days when we can't appreciate those differences, maybe we just take a little break and go get some coffee on our own and come back and try again. So marriage is a lot of work, but it's worth it. And marriage isn't find that one person. Everybody's like, you gotta find the one person. Where's my soulmate? Where's my whatever. I'm like, no. So he found me. He always jokes that he like pulled me out the sandbox at school. Because I was 16 and he was 21. But you just find that person that you have some things compatible with. And for us, it was always sports. It was you. And you just make it work from there on out. Like you just don't quit, because it's not.
It's green where you water, right? That type of thing. You have to water the grass to make it green,
Exactly. And it is work, but it is worth it. And I think that when you can stick it out because you both try and you both want to stick it out, there's something to be said for that. So God only knows we're together today. That's what I can tell you.
Well, I will tell the backstory a little bit, only to defend your husband, just because you said it sounds a little rougher than it really was, just because of age discrepancy. But so what it was when I was playing basketball, I was I think 11 or 12 years old at the time, and I was playing bitty basketball, and he happened to be my coach, very happenstantially. Him and another person that I already knew from different coaching.
His cousins were on your team, I think.
Yeah, his cousins were on my team, and their dad was coaching, and I knew them from baseball. And then he had basically offered to be an assistant coach. So he was my basketball coach when I was 12. And then so we were playing basketball. We had a pretty good team that year. Like I said, I was kind of coming into my own. We did end up losing in the finals to a competitor of mine that we kind of went back and forth throughout the years. But so in his defense, like I said, I actually came up to him one day. And I still don't know to the life of me why it happened. Like I said, other than some intervention or something. But I was like, "You think my sister's pretty hot, huh?" And he's like, "What? Like, what are you talking about? Like, who's your sister?" And I'm like, "She's over there." He's like, "Because I think you were doing ball or still doing pageantry at the time, and you happened to come to the game." And I pointed you out to him, and I was like, "Yeah, she's right over there. What do you think?" And he was just kind of like, "Sure, like whatever." Like we're trying to play a game, and he's like trying to, he's also a little bit older, right? I'm 12, he's 21, so he's 10 years older than me. And I kind of set him up basically on purpose, just because I thought he was a good guy and he seemed like really chill and super fun to hang out with. And like I said, we didn't hang out, but at basketball when he was coaching. But then we developed a friendship over time. Like I said, you and him obviously started a relationship later on and things like that. And like I said, he actually taught me a lot. He's one of the guys I played basketball with. Once you guys got married and stuff, I was on his team for pickup ball after I graduated, stuff like that. And he taught me a lot. Even we used to play video games together, and he used to hustle me for basketball cards. And I still remember that because he'd bet, like he'd play and he'd like set me up, he'd shark me a little, and I'd beat him. And then I put Kobe cards on the line, or Vince Carter cards at the time, and he'd beat me, he'd smoke me, and I was like, "What the hell is this? Like, what happened?" But I didn't know. Yeah, but he was hustling me. So like, but it's a good lesson. Don't gamble unless you're willing.
He's always a work smarter, not harder kind of guy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But like I said, in your husband's defense, like I said, it really wasn't something he was planning on happening. Like I said, he just thought he was going to coach me in basketball. And then come to find out, I ended up hooking my sister up with him. And then you guys have been together ever since. So, which is still funny because I can't hold a relationship for more than 2 years. And you guys have been together for 20. So I can't do it for other people.
Try and set you up. I don't know. Maybe it's time to turn the tables, man. I don't know. Yeah. I remember specifically one time you saying, "Hey, Tam, you got a phone call." And we had call waiting back in the day. So I'm okay. Travis must have been on the phone. He got a beep. No, you called him. Come to find out. I didn't know that till years later.
I set him up.
He called me and he was like, "You want to talk to my sister?" And before he could even answer, apparently you were like, "Tam, phone." And I'm like, "Okay." So I'm like, "Hello, who's this?" And, he said, "My husband." And I'm like, "Well, okay." And then we talked for like 5 hours,
So I ruined his life basically, or I made his life. It's hard to tell.
All your fault.
It's hard to
he
tell.
Still cries himself to sleep every night, but he's not going anywhere. So
right. But so that brings us kind of into what was college like for you? Obviously, like I said, you had different plans, and then you ended up going to a Christian college, and you ended up doing education, correct? Like, wasn't that the major you're going for elementary ed, I believe, at the time?
Yep.
So what was that like, going from, secular school or public school and then going into Christian college and then, like I said, kind of changing your whole avenue or trajectory and then becoming a teacher after that? What was that like for you?
So it's funny. Teaching was always kind of like something on the back burner. Like I said, I wanted to be a physical therapist or an orthopedic surgeon. I wasn't really sure, I was going all out. And then I was like, do I really want to do like a residency? Do I really want to be in college for like 14 years? And then, lo and behold, I was in college for like 8 years, but whatever. By the time you're all said and done with a master's. Right. So anyway, when I was in, 10th grade there, and I started really studying and learning, and I chose the Bible, and I chose like the God path for me. I was kind of like, I should probably go to a Christian college, but I don't know anything about anything. Like I was, we grew up Catholic. I didn't have a clue, which end was up as far as Christian colleges. So, and they all call themselves Christian. So I was like, I could have wound up at a Jewish college. I have no idea. So I just started sending out applications and trying to figure some things out. Got some people's opinions, which were very important to me at the time, because I was very much a people pleaser at that age. Being in beauty pageants, you learn how to please people.
Right.
So that was kind of like, oh, you think that's what I should do? Okay, that must be what I should do. So I got some opinions. I wound up going to a Christian college out in Indiana. Graduated with my elementary education and Bible. I was actually minoring in missions. Oh, wow. God must have laughed hard when I'm going to be a missionary. Yeah. I'm like afraid of spiders. Okay. Like
travel to Peru for a week.
Yeah. Like my third world problems are like, oh, my water's not cold. No,
it's very different worlds.
But anyway, so I did that. And then I came home and I taught for a little bit, and teaching was kind of really something that really, I guess, grabbed me more than I wanted to admit, I guess. Some people said, you're really good working with the kids. You should really work with kids. And I was kind of like, how about I be an orthopedic surgeon? Right, But then when I made that decision to go to a Christian college, I was like, well, orthopedic surgery is not even an option out here. So I'll go the education route, see how that goes. And wound up teaching, loved it. My first year teaching, I had a student come that had special needs. And I was not a special ed major at that point. I had finished my elementary education, just general education. And I was like, oh my God, like I want to help this kid. Like I want to help, like I want to work with special needs kids. And I talked myself right out of that one, because I knew that this is going to be more schooling. This is going to, whatever. And I was kind of like, so whatever. So, we hustled and bustled around, and, we did some different things. And like I said, I really just want to be a mom too. So when I stopped teaching, I taught for 3 years, stopped teaching. I was going to stay home. That was my goal. I was going to, we were going to have kids. We're going to have a whole soccer team. I don't even know what I was thinking. We're living in an apartment, whatever, like, sure. But then we couldn't get pregnant. So I kind of just worked some odds and ends of jobs. I mean, I worked at Walmart. I worked, in transportation. I loaded trucks. I unloaded trucks. I worked in HR. I bounced around kind of the business world for a little bit. Actually got a business degree. Just to have a business degree was a 2-year, associates in HR office management. I'm just kind of like, just in case, you never know where this is going to go. So, I was not having a baby. So I'm like, I'm going to have another degree. So I got my business, on top of that. And I bounced around the business world for about 7 years and got grownups, man. I don't know how you do that, man. I'm like, no, thank you. I'm like, I will wipe snot all day long. Like, give me some grownups with a problem. I don't care about your human resource issues. I don't. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care about your problems. You're grown up, figure it out. Right. So, when I got pregnant with my son, I decided that I would go into like more of the HR field. So that's where I went up in HR. And then, through that experience, I really kind of got to know that I didn't love the business world. And I totally respect people that do and can make that whole like a career. I mean, like, you're very businessy, even, technology and like the whole thing. God bless your ministry. Like, no, I'm out. So I did that. I mean, the best thing that came out of that is I worked with Walmart truck drivers. I made a lot of friends. So that part I loved. If I would do that again in a heartbeat.
And the networking part of it is fun, right?
I am definitely going to work. Yeah, I'm definitely going back to work with Walmart truck drivers. I'm actually going to a reunion here coming up shortly, but just because I love them all so much. It was like having 182 little dads. It was amazing.
Right.
That part I loved, but
Right.
it was very demanding. And I was feeling I was working like 60 hours a day, just constant. And it worked when my son was little.
Right.
Because, we decided that we need to have two incomes because we live in a small area where, one income is, we can probably make it, but like I'm going to clip coupons and we're not going to drink soda and whatever, my husband prefers that I work. So that was kind of our caveat. I'm like, well, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to teach and I'm going to teach special ed. So my husband was like, are you sure? What? Really? Like, what happens? The special ed teachers, like special ed is not just helping the kids that are just a little bit lagging behind in some skills. Like, do you know what you're getting into? And I was like, I feel like I got to do this. Like, this was kind of I started there and I liked it. And then I need to go back. So that was more degree, more college. So hence 8 years later, 4 degrees, 5, how many I have? 5, I don't even know how many I have. Degrees later, now I've kind of landed where I feel like I can be for a while. And I say that a while because I never know. I never know what tomorrow's going to bring, but I've been teaching now for goodness, I got altogether 10 years.
Right.
3 at the beginning and then, so.
Well, now you just got to get your doctorate and just get into academia,
Oh God. So I mentioned that to my husband the other day and he's like, no.
Yeah.
No, we don't need another $30,000 debt for you.
Yeah, exactly. To make
and
$70,000
I think at some point I probably will graduate to teaching adults how to teach children, but for now.
Well, college age is fun too. Like the college kids are a good time. They're still trying to figure it out. And if you could teach like at a nice 2-year school or something, there's a lot of opportunity there, and they're all just trying to get through life, too. So it's kind of, you'd meet them in the middle,
I think that's probably how I'll retire, to be honest with you. I'll probably retire and do some adjunct, just a little bit here and there for fun, just to stay involved. And for now, I work with primarily nonverbal autistic students. And I love what I do. I get punched in the face for a living and I think it's great. Like I do. I love it. And not to say there's not hard days, even Friday night, I came home, I put in my earbuds and I popped up my computer. I was working on schoolwork, but I just needed a moment with some Stone Temple Pilots and don't talk to me, please.
Yeah. Got to de-stress.
Yeah. But honestly, it's good. And it's something that I wouldn't trade. I've always tried to be happy where I am, and there's been a lot of change and there's been a lot of things that have happened that are out of my control that, have catapulted me here or there or back and forth, or, I blow my shoulder out, or these things that you can't control, but I just kind of be like, hey, all right, cool. So here I am today. What are we going to do today?
What's the next phase, right?
Right. Yeah. So
but that's good. That resiliency is super important, especially career path and just day to day, just that resiliency, I said, is underrated. A lot of people don't quite get that. I don't think sometimes it's the level of, that resilience that you got to have day to day sometimes is, it makes or breaks, so it's good that you understood that going in.
Yeah. I think that's what we thought growing up.
Yeah. So what about parenting? What's parenting been like for you? Like I said, you do have a child. What's that like? What are the hard things and the fun things, I guess, for the parenting?
From day one, now everybody has a different experience from what I've been told. Even my friends. So when I had to have a C-section. So when I gave birth and they put that baby on my chest, I was immediately in love. Now there are some people that are like, and I get that. You just went through hell, right? So it's okay to be a little bit, I was on the other side of things. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing in the whole entire friggin' universe. This is amazing. So I loved my son instantly. And I really, I used to read, I was one of those read to your belly before he was born kind of people. I was like, we were bonding from day one. I got that pregnancy test back and I was like, wow, we are bonding. So it's parenting is probably the most fun I have ever had, being so overtired, so stressed out. Am I doing this right? Am I making any progress? And now my son is 11 and I have it down to the months. My coworkers find it hilarious, but I have it down to the months because I look at it as, I have 18 short years, right? And I've got to instill everything. And I think that comes from the way we were brought up. I have all this stuff that I've got to give him everything I've got, in that short amount of time. So, I'll walk in his room sometimes and, I'll see clothes everywhere and, a water bottle everywhere. And his computer's open and he's got CDs all over the floor. And I'm like, 76 months. I have 76 months left. There's no time, But,
That's funny.
honestly, it is very rewarding, and I love it. And he plays sports too, so I enjoy watching him play sports. I enjoy watching him grow as a person. I actually homeschooled kindergarten because I was in a horrific car accident, which allowed me to be in a wheelchair for several months and home in a hospital bed. So why not homeschool your kid, right? Resiliency. But no, I have really I've enjoyed parenting, but it is so much work, just like marriage, so much work. Like you're dealing with humans, right? Like it's every day, it's something new, it's different. I mean, yesterday was Mother's Day, and he comes out in the morning and he's like, "When is it Children's Day?" And I was like, "Bro, every day is Children's Day." Like, I mean, there's so much that we do just to try to invest in that next generation and, give them a good setup. And, but he's going to grow up too, and he's going to make his own choices, and he's going to do things I might not agree with, or do things that totally break my heart, crush me, and whatever. And then there might be things that I'm so proud of that I'll be wearing like my, Travis Bennett button, like Mom used to do for you. I don't know. He's a human.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's personalities and all that stuff too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like keeping all that in check. And like I said, obviously trying to grow them into to being an adult, like stuff like that. It's not an easy task.
So I mean, right now I'm just trying to do the work. Just do the work of parenting and enjoy it along the way. And that's hard, when you get tired and kind of like, nothing I do matters. I'm a failure, as a parent. But honestly, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
Yeah. What advice would you give yourself in your younger years if you could go back, like knowing what you know now? Is there something that sticks out, or a lesson you learned that you feel is very valuable and might help somebody out or yourself when you were younger?
Oh my God, this is such a great question. First of all, let me say, and I have chatted with several people about this, my very close friends. You could not pay me $1 trillion friggin' dollars to go back to be 18, 19, 20. I mean, there's not enough money in the world. Like, you could buy me a car, a house. Like, you could not pay me enough to go back. I do not envy anyone in that phase of life trying to figure it out when you are so ill-equipped. And I say to my son, 76 months, like I'm trying to equip, and he's still not going to, he's still going to do his deal and make his mistakes. And I would probably say the most helpful thing that I could share with dear younger me is don't do anything to please people.
Right. That's a good one. That's a good lesson.
Don't worry about what the crowd thinks. Don't worry about, don't go into a situation trying to figure out who's the most popular person in this room so I can align myself somehow with them, or I can make, whoever the leadership is, I can make them happy, or I can prove myself to be the hardest worker or whatever. Baloney. I would just say, let that go. Let it go. I actually read a really good book just recently called When People Are Big and God is Small. And it's about codependency and pleasing other people and just living your life constantly walking around on eggshells, having an anxiety attack, trying to please everybody in your, realm of influence. People go crazy, man. That's why we consume so many drugs. I mean, I heard a stat today about something like America consumes 80% of all pharmaceuticals. We're just trying to be that top dog. We're trying to, please people. And I would just say, you know what, figure out how to be the best you for today, be comfortable in yourself. And it took me a lot of years, a lot of years, to get there. Maybe now I'm 40. I don't know. I think it was more so, it really started when I blew out my shoulder and I couldn't get that scholarship I was trying to get. And then I couldn't go get that degree that I thought I had to have to be what I thought I should be. And, so it really started there, but it was such a process. And, I still struggle with that. I'm not saying I've arrived for sure. But from probably 16 to 36, literally just working through that little bit of identifying, hey, are you doing that because that's the right thing that in your heart to do? Or are you doing that to make so-and-so happy?
Right.
And I mean, so that's huge piece of
advice. What's a difficult way to live too? And as you mentioned before, I come from a corporate world and a business world. I see a lot of business too, where it's very much fratty. It's very much this is our company. This is why we do this. And then you try to fit into that mold. And, a lot of it,
Yep.
I get why people do it, because it's a lot of, I have to survive, I have to pay my bills. So I can't be myself. I have to be this other person to, hopefully
Yeah.
move in 10 years or whatever. So I get the baseline reasoning for it, but it's also like very much like, you have to do this every day for 40 hours a day. So like, are you going to fully commit to that person for the next 10 years? Like this person that you're not,
Right.
all
Yeah.
because you're afraid of like, they're going to fire me, or they're not going to like me, or I don't agree with this, like that mindset.
Right.
So it's a tough challenge. Like I do get why people do it, and I do understand it from a survival standpoint. But also, like I said, it's a risk mitigation thing. Like, are you okay with if it doesn't work out, or if you do get fired,
Right.
or like
Yeah.
whatever? Because then if you do get fired, say 5 or 7 years down the road, you're gonna have to go back to who you were, and you would have wasted all that time anyway, essentially. So it's a tough balancing act that I do get it to a degree. But like I said, I just think it's super important, especially as I've gotten older and things have gone how they've gone for me as well. I just think I appreciate the independence more. And I appreciate the fact that, I at least am comfortable with who I am, whether I make it or not, make it, and whatever it is.
Right. What is make it?
Right. And that brings me into my next question for you
Yeah.
is, how do you measure success, and what are your thoughts, or how have your thoughts changed on success over time?
100%, 180. Success used to be that have the big job,
Right.
Or be the best mom, or, be the best wife, have that
Right.
lasting marriage, have the nice house, have the car. I think that's very much the American dream is also a nightmare. Like
Capitalism.
you gotta kind of like
Yes.
walk that line of, am I living the American dream, or am I living
Right.
the American nightmare?
Yeah.
So not that hard work is wrong by any means. But you just have to be careful, as you walk that fine line, to remember to stay true to who you are. And like what Dad always used to say, I have to quote Dad. There's like the Bible and there's Dad. Like there's those two things in my brain all the time.
Measuring some authority, right?
Dad always used to say, if you have to pull yourself by the belt buckle and yank yourself out of bed to go to work in the morning, you're doing the wrong job.
Yeah.
And that very much, I lived that for 7 years. And, there were parts of it, like I said, with the Walmart drivers that I liked, but there were so many things about that where I was miserable, like, crying myself all the way to work, and, crying myself all the way home, and, just doing what I felt like I had to. But I think there's a lot of learning in that. Every experience can be a learning experience.
Sure.
But yeah, definitely, dear younger me, success,
it
is being true to you and being the best you can be.
Yeah.
And, there's actually a verse in the Bible about that. It's in Micah 6:8. It says, what does the Lord require of you? What does he require? Like, to justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. Like, be humble, be merciful to other people. Like, don't expect so much of other people. Like, give them space of grace, be merciful, be forgiving, and do right. Like, just do right. And you have to have that, I think, moral compass to really help you be able to measure your success, if you want to put it in, in that terminology. Like, success for me is knowing that I did a little bit better today, walking like the Christian walk, or walking my family walk, or basically who I am today. Did I do a little bit better with that than I did yesterday? Maybe yesterday I lost my cool as a parent. I was tired. I yelled. Whatever. And like today, hey, I didn't yell. Okay. Winning. Hashtag winning, right? So, success, I think, can be momentary. Success can be, just being able to improve on you, and just know that when you go to bed at the end of the day, like, I did my best today.
Right.
I did, I'm trying to be a good human. So success is, I have all these things now. Like, I have a car, I have a house, I have a husband, I have a child, I have a career. Yay. Woohoo.
It's kind of funny. I think about Jesus too a lot, even though like I'm not really like, going to church and stuff like that anymore. But I do think about a lot of the things that like he did. So even, for example, and not to bring it down a negative path, but it's kind of what happened. I think of like the things that he's done, right? Like he fed people that needed food. He would talk to harlots or hookers or whatever you want to call it. Yep. He was a man of the people. And then ultimately what happened? They killed him. Right. So it's kind of interesting. I look at it as like, okay, so even if you're doing the right things, like people can still turn on you. Like it happens. Like it's, like you just have to know you're doing the right thing, and why you're doing it matters. It doesn't matter the outcome. You only control the action. So I've learned, I've been trying to do that recently. Like I've made money before. I've been broke. I'm pretty broke now. But, to me, it's like, it doesn't matter though, because I've lived both lives. Right. So that's how I look at it, is like my actions have remained the same. The outcomes have been different. And like I said, some of the things I've done to myself, obviously, you know, I've put myself through some torture also, on purpose, I guess. But like I said, I think the real metric of measure is, why are you doing it? Is the motivation correct? And then whatever happens, happens. You don't know that. You can't predict that. You can't do it. Like, it has nothing to do with you. So I just think that that's very valuable. Like I said, like how is success measured, and like what can you do to, you know, engage people and try to make their lives better, and obviously, you know, be a good person on top of that. So that's a very good example.
It's all about the
And
motivation.
then, yeah, exactly. And then lastly, to wrap it up, and then I'll give you an opportunity if there's anything else you wanted to cover that I didn't get to. But the last question I have is, what do you think your legacy will be, or what do you want it to be? It kind of pivots off the success question.
Yeah, so funny how that has changed. Total 182, right? Like it used to be me, my plan, my college degree, my career, my success, you know. And I would say now it is more like, what lives have I impacted? Like, how has somebody else's burden maybe just been made a little bit easier? How have, you know, I lived in front of people, and you know, like, you know me all my life, right? So you know me you're 5 years younger than me. So 37 years. So, I mean, you know, that I'm a human, that while I say, you know, that I'm a Christian, I'll be the first one to not put a Jesus fish on my car, because when I drive like a moron, I don't want somebody blaming Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Exactly.
from my
It goes both ways, right?
You know,
So
yeah, I'm like, I love Jesus and I swear like a trucker, you know, like, I mean, I'm very much a human. So I really want my legacy to be like, you know, she tried, like she was a Christian. Yes. And she tried. Like she tried, because like my motivation is totally different. Like my motivation now is not the money, the cars, the house, the kids, and the perfect husband, and the, you know, size 6 waist with a size 10 ass, and whatever, all that stuff. You know, like my motivation is not that. Like my motivation is, God changed me. So I want other people to be able to see that maybe I'm a little bit different, maybe a little loony sometimes, whatever, but like I'm a little bit different because of what he's done for me. And I'm motivated because of that love to want to show other people that love. So like, yeah, lift their burdens. Like you said, feed people, you know, have people over, like whatever, make somebody's burden a little bit lighter, go visit somebody who's sick or not feeling well or something like that, or help somebody maybe with their kids, or like if somebody's marriage is failing, just be there to be like, hey, I'm praying for you. Like, you know, this is going to get easier. Like, just hang in there. You know, so my motivation is different, and I want people to see, like, she tried, you know, she lived this life. She was not perfect. She tried. So
it's good that you bring that up too, you know, like, especially like in my situation in particular, not to bring it back on me, but you know, one of the things that I think about too is like, I have a lot of married friends. And I think that like the last thing I would ever want for them to do is to like break up, you know, because to me, like, it's such a valuable thing, and to have that love in your life is so crucial. And just because I'm single doesn't mean I want everyone to be. So that's like, it's just interesting because, like I said, I have 3 or 4 really close friends that are all married, and I try to do that for them. Like, I try to be really supportive of them. You know, like, I'm not like telling them their husbands like, hey, we should go out. Let's go out in a town tonight just because I'm single. Like, I don't live that way on purpose, because, you know, if I'm going to live how I'm living, then that doesn't have to be, they don't have to be a part of it. You know what I mean? When it comes to that type of thing, because I do respect their relationship. I do respect what their love means to them. And I think it's important. You know, I just think that, like I said, to really be able to keep people going the right path, or at least for them, you know, like I said, whether it's marriage or just being a good parent, like that stuff, just being a good support and value to them, I think is just super important, because, you know, like I said, parenting's hard, marriage is hard. So if you can just be that way for people, it's vital, I think, to their success. And I think it just helps them on those rough days, you know, where it might not be going well, or maybe they're second guessing themselves or their partner or their kids or whatever. So I just think it's super important just to kind of be there and support that process. But no, I appreciate those answers. Is there any questions or anything that you wanted to bring up? We are approaching an hour, so I wanted to at least give you the last couple of minutes if there's anything or any stories that, you know, came to your mind that you wanted to touch on.
Oh man, jeez.
And if not, that's fine. I just figured I'd give you the opportunity, because I made a whole talking points and all that stuff. So like I said, I kind of cheated, but
no, I appreciate that. You know, again, I really appreciate what you're doing. I mean, I think, and this, I think will maybe just quickly sum up everything that we've talked about tonight. You know, what you're doing, like by interviewing, like I said, the average Joes and the Josephines, I'll put it that way, I think is so helpful to people, because, you know, if 2 people watch this video and maybe somebody got encouraged about, hey, you know, I'm not a perfect mom either. Like, okay, you know, there's somebody like me that's not going to quit. Yay, maybe I won't quit either. Then like, it's worth it. You know, like I feel like I'm really appreciative of what you're doing. And I really think that it is more valuable to see reality, and not reality TV, because we all know that's not real, right?
Yeah.
Like to see reality in action. Like, I've watched every interview that you've done, and I know I've been encouraged. I've been encouraged by like Brandon Horner and Cass Bennett, and you know, like I've been encouraged in just different things that they were able to share, and how they maybe struggled and how they've had some success, you know, as we talked about, but just because they're real and they're real people, and you know, and not that people that are celebrities or have a lot of money or are sports stars or whatever don't have problems, because everybody has problems, right? Everybody has struggles, you know, but like just to be able to, like we say, wake up in the morning and say, you know, I'm having like this problem is real, very real in my life. And no, I don't have enough money to fix it. And no, I don't have enough, you know, wisdom or counseling or whatever to be able to fix it. Like, this is a very real problem. I have cancer, you know, I don't like, you know, just these problems that people have. Yeah. Like to be able to see somebody else that, hey, they have a similar issue and they're not quitting, right? Like they're just, they're keeping on. And I love that. And I love that you're doing this, because I think it encourages people, like that there are other real people out there that are trying to struggle and, you know, make their way through this life and not give up. So good for you, man.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's weird how like your life kind of traverses through, right? The highs and the lows, and it comes and goes, and just don't overreact to it when things are rough, you know, and I've had my fair share of rough things, but it's funny too, how like certain things hit you in certain times just right. Like I know, like even like Bob Dylan's song, like Rolling Stone, I've heard it a million times and it never meant anything really to me. I was like, yeah, it's a decent song. All right. But then like he talks about specifically like not having talent and like not being able to eat and like trying to work through like the road and gigs and all the stuff that's super hard and just not getting the responses he wanted. And now I feel that way. Like it kind of resonates with me more, because that's kind of where I'm at in my life. Like I've had the highs, I've had great things happen. I've really challenged myself, but now I'm on the other end and I'm working through those really rough things. And like I said, and some of it was my own fault, obviously, and we're not obviously the same talent-wise, me and Bob Dylan. But what I'm getting at is like the things that he says though resonate more. Like it meets you right where you're at sometimes. Like the things you need, you'll get when you need it. And it's just interesting, you know, whether it's music or movies or people, it's like you see those people. And like I said, even now, like I have a great respect for all my friends a lot more, because I came off a 3-year stint in Florida where I was just trying to grow professionally, and I did, and it was very challenging, but I took for granted their friendship really. And now I have it back. And like I said, I have my family and all the people I love back, and I can see them every day. And it just really, like, I'm very different and I'm very more appreciative. That's why, like, even interviewing you, for example, you know, I just think like those connections and those relationships are just super important. And, you know, especially when, you know, things are great, you got to really appreciate it, because like I said, it's going to be rough at some point, and you just don't know like the value of people that they have in your life until you lose it. So yeah, but like I said, I appreciate your time. Like I said, I'll let you go, but I just want to say thank you again for the interview. And like I said, I'll have Denise Kavanaugh on tomorrow night. So another woman, because she actually mentioned that I was all dudes. So
that's awesome. Yeah, bring on the Josephines, man. I'm there.
Well, like I said, if there's anyone that wants to be interviewed, like I said, I'd be happy to interview them, as long as I can, you know, make some good questionnaires just to try to direct the conversation. But I appreciate you. I think you're very valuable. I love you very much. And I hope that you have a wonderful night. So thank you so much, Tammy.
Love you very much, brother. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome. Have a great night. Thank you. Bye.